Most of us have been disenchanted with the world of work at some point in our careers. But what if the culture of our organizations actively encouraged better communication, creativity, and experimentation in pursuit of creating much better solutions for the people we serve? My guest and creative leadership consultant Arne van Oosterom is sought after by leaders who seek to foster that environment for their teams. In this conversation, Arne and I discuss how he helps leaders and teams stretch the boundaries of what they think is possible. We explore Arne's path to becoming the entrepreneur and creative leadership consultant he is today, including how dyslexia shaped how he engaged with the world, how he learned to overcome the fear of failure, and how he incorporated what he learned as a musician, visual artist, photographer, and comedian into businesses he founded. Arne's story is an example of how the skills and tools from the world of art can help us transform ourselves and how we show up and lead in the world of work. My hope is that, like me, you find Arne's story a source of inspiration that helps you reframe any personal limitation, recognize your different abilities and talents, and find ways to bring them together in a more creative, integrated, and more satisfying expression of yourself. Let's dive in. Arne, welcome to Making Business Art. Thank you so much for being a guest today. How are you doing?
Great being here. I'm fine. It was running around a little bit, but I'm calming down now. So doing fine.
Awesome. Well, Arne, you have quite a bio. You've done many things. You still like to keep your hands in different buckets. And we're going to talk about your creative life and what you're doing with your consulting and coaching work. But something I know that you have done in the past is be a stand-up comedian, and you like to make people laugh. So on the flip side of that, I just like to open up by just asking, what makes you laugh really hard?
Oh boy, that's a good one. I'm trying to keep that a secret, but somehow people find out. I don't know why. It's been a long time ago that I've done stand-up, but it's actually been an amazing experience for me. But I might share some of that, what I learned from it. But what makes me laugh? Yeah, the Dutch, they have a dark sense of humor. And so what makes me laugh is when there's something wrong but unintended of a thing. But it shouldn't hurt people or anything. But when things go wrong, that sometimes make me laugh. When I make mistakes, that's kind of odd maybe, but sometimes something terrible goes wrong. Like actually the day before yesterday, I was running a training program. And somehow, and it was really important. It was in a different location, and I have my laptop and I had everything. And I was with my London team, and they got me an extra screen and the whole thing, blah, blah, blah. But they have a different socket thing for the charger. So, I was like, oh, damn it, I don't have it. And I tried it, and then my laptop slowly started running out of juice. And so that's horrible because it's actually a client and it's important, but somehow I see myself then like with two screens, and in the end I was on my phone and I had a little mini iPad. So it was on I had two big screens, but I was on my phone and a little mini iPad. And so to me, I thought, that makes me laugh. I find that
I have to say that's a good quality, because sometimes I freak out too much, but it's like might as well laugh about some stuff, right?
Well, I start freaking out. First, it's like, oh my God, I'm getting really and then I see myself struggling like that in such a silly way. And the training was about leadership and facilitation and all that. So it became actually a really good example of things go wrong. It's human, share it. If you say so, people understand. Everybody had these problems. We all have them every now and then, right? Technology will fail the minute you really need it. And so I know those things are funny to me. Yeah. I like to laugh in general.
Just to be said about laughing at ourselves, because there's so much comedy to be found there. First of all.
Oh yeah, I'm very funny to myself.
Exactly. Well, I'm really ridiculous. Like if I look at my own idiosyncrasies, sometimes I just have to laugh at my own ridiculousness. Well, Arne, let's get into our conversation for today. And the question I like to ask first is, where do you work and what do you get paid to do? And I know you do many things, so feel free to answer that question in whatever way you feel inspired to do so at this moment.
Hard questions. Well, literally, where do I work? I'm right now in my studio in Haarlem, which is a very old city town, very close to Amsterdam. It's the original Haarlem, but then with two A's. And it's nothing like Harlem, but anyway, that's where the name comes from. It's a beautiful town. It's like a mini Amsterdam, very close to the beach, which is just wonderful. So that's where I work. And what I do here is I'm an entrepreneur. So actually, I'm starting a business, but I've actually quite recently really I found out I knew this, but it kind of, I again realized that the one thing that I actually really like doing, and I am doing, and I have been doing for a while, but I felt that the other day when I was running a training session on storytelling, I thought, what I really like and what I really enjoy doing is making impact on people, on human beings, on individuals. So when you train someone, so the other day, like I said, I was running this storytelling session, and it's not about me doing this awesome job or anything. I'm not saying that I'm awesome. I think all teachers are awesome. But when you teach someone something profound and you see it changes them, and they tell you, like, there's a group from Norway, and it was this big Norwegian guy. I am tall, like I'm almost 2 meters. I'm not sure what that is in US sizes, but
You're like 6'5".
I'm
Yeah.
6'5". All right, I'm 6'5".
Thereabouts, or a little more.
Yeah, a little more than that. Yeah. Okay, so I'm 6'5", a little more. And then this giant of a Norwegian guy, bigger than me, I was sitting down at a restaurant. He came behind me to grab me, and he said, "Arne, I want to take you home." So what's going on? He said, "My wife was very happy with you." And I said, "What do you mean?" "Yeah, she sees I'm changing." And I thought, wow, that's such an amazing compliment.
Yes.
That really, that emotionally really gets me. So I thought, this is what I like doing. Although I've never really thought about doing that. It just happened. But that's what that's what I have been doing. That's what I want to do. And so that's what people pay me for, which is sort of, to me, is like, wow. Yeah. They pay me. And the other thing is, being a coach, a facilitator, a trainer, it's exhausting at the same time. I'm really tired because you give it all your energy, right? So, yeah. And so when I'm done and come home and I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. And I'm thinking, what did I do? I just talk. So they pay me to be there and talk and share things, but also create a space for people to feel safe, so they can also talk and share and be open and vulnerable. So I create a vulnerable space for people. And that's such a rewarding thing to do when that works. And you see it, and people open up and they share things that they otherwise would not share. And it helps them, really changes things for them. And I'm so proud. I did that. Wow, it's cool. And yeah, I have so much self-doubt, really. But so then it's extra like, wow, really? Did that do something for you? Wow, it's so cool. So that's what I do. And that's what I...
I'm gonna yes, and I'm gonna build on what you're saying, because you said they pay you to be there. And I'm gonna hone in on the word be, because they pay you to be there in space-time, to be in a location physically. But I think there's also something about a way of being that you're bringing to the room that helps shape that container that you're creating with and for people, with visuals, with whatever arrangement of the room and the tools and the other things. And there's so much that I've been learning about facilitation, that there's a piece of it that's about kind of giving people permission. Not that they need permission, but offering that permission, that where people... Have you ever heard that collective exhale in a room where people like kind of relax, let go? They're kind of tense, and then there's a moment where they're like, if it's going well, right? There's a moment where they're like, they relax, and then just the ideas just get so much more interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So
giving permission, I think.
Yeah. So I think beyond talking, I think it's about a way of being also that
yeah. Well, that's a leadership skill, I think. So, I mean, meaning that you show people, you create an option for people that they don't know that was there. by being that option, by saying you can behave this way. This is how we can also, because a lot of people are stuck in environments, in cultures of fear, where mistakes are frowned upon, where you don't want to stand out. So there's a lot of people who are not used to a real psychological safe space. They sometimes even, you really have to kind of, it's really interesting because often people don't even realize they're in a toxic environment,
Right.
and many
Yeah.
people are, but they don't
Mhm.
realize it because they think it's normal. And I am someone, I'm an outsider. And obviously when as a consultant, you are an outsider. You come in and you go like, hey, this is odd. And this is interesting. This is what I observe, but as also as a facilitator and as a leader, I think it's really important. And there's this little quote, it's taken from a story, which I totally forgot the name of, but it's about the fish not knowing what water is.
Yes.
Right. And so this idea of, hey, you come in and you say, hey, what about all this water? And the fish go, what's water? Right. And you are the one recognizing that's
Mhm.
culture, that's behavior, those are patterns that you recognize. And that's so powerful. And you being able to show them there are other ways, or there are ways to break that pattern, where you can all of a sudden you get those permissions to do things differently. And that feels liberating for people. And I think that makes such a impact. And that's why a lot of people respond emotionally, because they all of a sudden feel liberated, which and then they see the difference. And that is again, that's why I think you're there. So being there the way, and can link that to theater and all that, but or stage personalities, or being yourself, your authentic self and all that. But there's such a deep truth to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting you bring that up with a client that I was working with last year and this year. I literally would bring that up sometimes, like, hey, we have to recognize the waters that we're swimming in. And I would tell them up front, like, hey, I'm going to play Captain Obvious because things are so obvious, we stop seeing them.
Yeah.
And we have to just step back and kind of
Yep.
regain
Exactly.
awareness, like, oh, this is in front of me. And let's
Yeah.
recognize it and take that into account.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
Arne, in looking at your digital presence, I came across this quote and from you. And it says, I aim to inspire, teach, connect, and stretch the boundaries of what people think is possible. So tell me more about what you have learned over time about helping people stretch those boundaries about what they think it's possible. What's been kind of the arc of learning and recognition from 20 years ago to now? If you can give
Oh
me
boy.
some brushstrokes around that.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you one of my first experiences that made me realize this is I think one of the first times that I facilitated something, because that wasn't the thing I set out to do, right? So it wasn't like I'm going to be a facilitator. No, I didn't even know what that was. I kind of it happened, but there was this first time that I would run a workshop. I didn't call it facilitation, but I was running a workshop, and with a group of government officials, quite top people from Dutch government, and from a ministry of, I think, finance or something like economics or something like that, a long time ago. But anyway, so I'm in this room, and they're all men in their late 40s, early 50s, something like that, suit and tie. And I don't know, I was way younger and never had a suit and tie, feeling completely awkward, because one of the things I wanted them to do was make drawings. I had pencils and paper because they were developing something, and I wanted them to draw an advertisement, kind of just an ad, like on paper. What would a magazine advertisement or something like that? So what would it look like? And I wanted them to draw that, and so I had that, and then so I was setting up the room, my pencils and my paper and all that. So these men came in, and I always feel like I'm in the wrong movie. By the way, I'm always like am I in this movie? Where's my script? I'm not supposed to be here. How did that happen? And anyway, I was there and I kind of felt completely awkward. But anyway, I had no choice. So I somehow thought it was a good idea the days before. So I said to them, okay, so after getting them started, and I said, okay, now I want you to make that drawing. And I'm like, they're not going to do that. They're not going to. But what happened is they took off their jackets and they got the pencils. They got up because I put the paper in the walls and stuff like that. And they said, all right, let's go do it. And they really enjoyed it and they liked it. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. So if I just tell people something that let's go and do this because I have a plan, people will go for it. If you create the right environment and they kind of trust you, and they often will because you're the person standing there. So they'll go like, oh, we must have an idea. They'll do it. And that kind of helped me get a little bit more secure about being sort of a facilitator and being able to say, wait, I can introduce things because creativity is about breaking patterns. I can introduce these interventions in the normal ways of working, and it will make them think differently, but they will allow me to do so. That is amazing. So, I mean, that led me to things like nowadays. So we just a couple of days ago, I was doing opening actually a day of workshops for this organization, and I was going to do an opening talk. And so they introduced me, and I went on stage, and I stood on stage. But the first 3 minutes, I didn't say a word. I just stood there in silence because I wanted them to kind of feel what it means, what it does to you and your brain and your inner chatter when you don't know what's going on. Right. And it's awkwardness of silence. And you expect this guy to start talking and show you PowerPoint presentations. And he doesn't do anything. He's just looking at you, right? And so there's like people. So I always kind of try to do the 5 minutes. I never, because it's awful. I hate it too because there's this tension in the room and people are like looking away and they don't know what to do and they're trying to solve it because your brain wants to solve it. Your brain goes like, what's going on? What are the rules? How do I act? What is normal? What do other people do? So you see them all go like, I don't know what's happening. And then some people will go and try to solve it, or someone makes a comment like, well, this is the best opening I've ever had. And one lady was clearly very annoyed. Someone else said, do you think this is part of it? And one lady got up and said, oh, we have to do something. So what is your name? And it's so funny. And obviously my point is, I'm then talking about your own barriers. So what's happening? If you don't feel safe, right, then you try to solve it and there's all this stuff, and it's only 3 minutes and et cetera, et cetera. I think it's scary to do, by the way, but I can do it because I had all these experiences of creating these interventions and playing with these things. So I can experiment. I don't know what's going to happen. I just think, let's try this. Let's see what happens if I do that. And I'm not afraid to look like a fool or make a mistake. And that's the thing, right? So I give these options because I'm not afraid to fail. So, and because I'm not afraid to fail, I can experiment and try stuff. And the odd thing is, if I fail, people still think I was very courageous. So there is no failure because I still show them that there's all these things. So that's what I mean with stretching the boundaries of what's possible and creating all these interventions and behaving differently and unexpected and having them do things that they didn't know. Not just uncomfortable things, by the way, but when you stretch those boundaries, all these other things all of a sudden feel really comfortable and easy to do because you felt so uncomfortable just a minute ago. And then, right. So I can play with that. And I've learned that, and not just my the last 20 years when I was running design firms, but also way before, because I started a band when I was like 11. And I think we had a band for a week and we were on stage playing. I could not play music. I had a little Casio keyboard and I could play with one finger. And I had 4 friends, and they also had little keyboards. And there was one guy who had a guitar, and he was a metal fan. So I was in my ding, ding, ding. I think we played a Beatles song or something like that. And he was on his metal guitar, and it was ding, 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 something. I don't know what we played, but it must have been horrible. I don't know. I played. I had fun. Sometimes I think I'm just stupid, to be quite honest. Like, but looking back, but at the time it was great, and I learned, and so from that moment I felt like, oh, I can just go and do it. Nothing really bad happened after that. My friends were still my friends. I still failed at school, like I did before. So no problem, right? So yeah, I think that's sort of so for me, it's really common. I'm comfortable, and I have dyslexia, so I don't fit in anyway. So maybe that's also a part of it. Like, I'm a misfit.
Well, I think there's when we disrupt patterns, there's that opportunity to repattern, because either the old pattern can get reconstituted, or maybe, possibly, if there's some intention and skill and care involved, maybe we can repattern into something else, like reprogram.
Oh, totally.
And I think bringing that spirit helps. Again, going back to that way of being, bringing that spirit to the room kind of helps somebody model it, see like, oh, okay, if he can fail, I can fail. It's okay.
Yep.
Like I have somebody kind of got my back, and then the next person, and then the next person, and then
exactly.
And then hopefully if things go right, it kind of catches on fire, and then you have like a really interesting space and energy happening, where out of which hopefully really good things come out of. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, that's what I call creative leadership. Creative leadership is that.
And we shall talk about that very soon. But before I do that, I do like to jump in the time machine and go back and make some stops in people's past and just learn about their own journey and what they have learned along the way. And something I do know about you, Arne, is that early on,
you know a lot about me. I think you do too much.
A little bit. I got my spies out there watching your house. No, but I know that early on you picked up the practice of photography, which you still do today, as far as I know. And I'm just curious if you can tell me about how your ability to see and frame your photography subjects has evolved over time. Like, give me some brushstrokes. Where were you at? And when you were, I think you were like 10, 11 around there when you picked up a camera, and then maybe in college, and then maybe now, like what's been the evolution of that?
Yeah, well, so my father was a very, very good photographer as an amateur, but also a scientist. So he really liked developing photos. This is the analog time, right? So, analog, awesome. Developing film and photos in the darkroom. So I think he influenced me because basically we had all this stuff, and I don't know if I asked for it, but they gave me a camera for my birthday. I think it was 10 or 11, we said, I think 10, maybe even younger, but I got my first camera. And so photography became sort of, and so when you have a father that does that, it's an option you have, right? Because you see it, and it's a thing he did. And he developed his photo. So he taught me, he turned the bathroom sort of into a development room, so we could do it there. And because that was the only room we could really get all the light out and stuff. So that was something that was the start of it. But my interest in photography was not so much because I actually wasn't really interested in the chemical stuff at all, because that's not me at all. I had to do it, and it's kind of exciting to do it, but actually really did not enjoy it at all. I enjoyed making the photos and obviously having the finished product. But that is because my mother's side of the family, they're artists. And so my mother's the artist. And so those are two different kind of voices in my head still, like the scientists and the artist. The person that says, I can feel something, I feel it, it's there. And then my father would be the voice where he would say, if you can't measure it, it's not real, or something like that. So those are the two voices in my head, which is good. But I actually wanted to be an artist. I still do, by the way. I say I still do. But I'm not allowed to say that out loud, but I consider myself an artist way more than a consultant or a business person or an entrepreneur. I do things from an artist's perspective. That's at least the way I feel it. But my mother comes from an artist family. My grandfather, on my mother's side, was quite a famous artist. And I was really good at drawing. So actually, people always thought I was going to go and be an artist and draw, paint and stuff like that. But my grandfather was also a very terrible, won't say the words, not a nice person. And I was actually quite scared of him. And so to me, I was like, no, I'm not going to be that person. And so I chose photography because that was sort of, for me, the same thing. It's making images. It's creating images and creating something out of nothing, right? So that the idea of creating something meaningful out of nothing, out of just kind of, and in photography, you're pointing your lens at something, you frame it, and then all of a sudden it turns you into something meaningful, which wasn't there, but you saw it. And just because you framed it in a certain way, it becomes either more beautiful or exciting or something. There's tension there. And so for me, it was all the same. It was the same as making music. It's all the same. It's like from your imagination, from out of thin air, you create something. It wasn't there before that. And then I did something, and then there's something there. And then people go like, and I go like, huh, it's kind of nice. It does something to me. That is an addictive thing for me. And to me, that's the same with starting businesses. There's nothing there. And I go, something like this. And then there's something there.
How has this evolution in photography kind of influenced or changed the way that you see things,
framing,
that you see the world?
Yeah. Well, so it teaches you to see. So I've done like projects where I did ethnographic research, design research, or observations, stuff like that. I trained my eye. I can observe. I can look at things. I know I can look at things on different levels. I can kind of zoom in and zoom out the way, because I train myself to see things that other people don't see, right? So because you're looking for patterns that are hidden, or things that are in between things, or the corners where nobody actually watches. I did a whole series of photos on like places that you don't see, like really like boring things, like there's a little corner thingy and there's nothing there. And it can be inside spaces or outside, and just that, like the mundane, the nothingness of that, we turn it into something really interesting, because nobody looks at these things, but it's training you, right? I'm not saying that was an amazing series of photos, but I really enjoy that. I like that. I have a series of photos that are just from the floor, from the street, where I see patterns in whatever is on the floor. It can be in the concrete or whatever. And then you kind of put it into a frame, and then all of a sudden it becomes almost like a little bit of art or something, where there's interesting tension in the lining and whatever. So there's such it teaches you to see things and have attention and focus, and have the sort of pay attention to things. There's just to pay attention to something, real attention, to really attention. And so if I take photos, if I get my camera with me, which I'm almost always have with me, I look at the world differently. So that's the other thing. If I have my camera in my hand, I look at the world differently, even depending on the lens I have on it. So if I have a wide angle lens or kind of a 50 millimeters, I see the world differently. So when I'm with my family, I shall never take a camera with me. They don't want me to, because I will be completely gone, and my head will be in another space. But that's something I learned, to have an attention on a different level, so I can observe things. I can step out. You mentioned zooming out a little bit, stepping back and look at the world differently. To me, that's zooming out and zooming in. For me, that's really natural. I've trained my eyes and my brain to do so. So that has something, that's not only from photography, it's also from drawing, because I can also sit somewhere and just look at something and start drawing it. Go like, let's just draw this little thing that's there. Totally not interesting. But if you make a drawing of it, so like, it's pretty cool. So attention to detail and to the bigger picture, because I think that's, yeah, photography is an amazing skill. And by the way, everything that you do will teach you things that you can apply on other things, right? So there's always, it's not like if you teach yourself to be a photographer, that's the only thing that it applies to. No, of course not. You're training some skills that you can use for other things too. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do some photography myself,
I know.
and I've noticed how I look at and appreciate light in a very different way.
Yeah.
Like early morning light, I love early morning light when it's a little golden and the sun's a little orangey, like 10 minutes after sunrise. I just love to look at that light just landing on a tree or anywhere on a landscape. For me, it's just so beautiful. And it's, in a way, I think for me, it's opened up the ability to appreciate things more and more deeply and more broadly, because then it's just looking at the world, like how light is landing in different places and how it looks.
But does it also make you restless? Are you feeling restless because you want to capture it?
Yeah.
Because I have that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have that?
Well, the other thing is in the photography that I do, I love to photograph, do either portraits or photograph events. And there's something primal around that, because it's kind of like hunting. Because when I'm photographing events, I'm hunting for emotion, I'm hunting for moments. It's taught me patience. The hunting is you kind of like stalking in a good way. You're the patience of stalking the right thing that you want to capture. And then when you capture that moment, it feels so good. And then it feels really nice to show it back to people, especially when you're capturing people expressing something really beautiful, right? Individually or in a group. Just feels really good.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that's another thing I think I learned through photography, sort of capturing that moment. It's that I kind of sense, well, there's two things. So like I've done a lot of street photography, and this is where you can, there's a few strategies. One is you see sort of there's light and there's shade and there's something that you go like, now I just need some people. And then, so you need to be patient, but you see it happen. You see now, if there's something happening here, something needs to happen, then it's going to be awesome. And then you need to have patience and you sit there. The other thing is that you just walk around and just kind of observe and just this the hunting thing. Well, both is a kind of a hunting thing. It's two different ways of hunting, I guess. I'm clearly not a hunter. But but what it taught me is that and some people will actually mention it to me, which I didn't really realize, is that I got really good at predicting something is going to happen. So I have my camera ready. I go like, oh, this might there. And then I have it. And it was just a moment, but I saw the movement of the people and I thought,
the
this
pattern
is
recognition.
Right. You have pattern recognition again. Yeah. And that's also great because it helps me in facilitation, because these are the senses I also use when I facilitate groups of people, where I think those are little antennas that I've also trained. Also in photography, that I kind of sense the movement and what's going to happen. It seems also almost mysterious, which it's not. But I kind of like, oh yeah, I got those photos and nobody else did, because like, yeah, I knew they were going to do that. That was going to be a funny moment because they were preparing that, they were doing that. She came in, and I knew that, oh, wait a minute, they know each other. They're gonna laugh or something, or they're gonna say hello, or something going to happen. So it's that pattern recognition, which I think is it's true.
Something else. I mean, I'll share this about myself. Something else that I learned: sometimes I'll be shooting an event where the space and the light, etc., is very challenging, right? It's not optimal, and then I find myself complaining like, oh, I wish this was better. And what it's taught me is to kind of look back and be like, well, this is what it is. How can I be better? How can I do a better job right now? Like, what can I do to get something better out of this situation where the lighting's horrible, the space is non-inspiring, etc., etc.
Yeah, well, that's a facilitator's job all the time. You go, right? So you get into in a situation where they say, well, we're going to do the workshop here in this office space. And you're like, whoa, there's no natural light. And can we move the desks? And then, because they're all stuck to the floor or something. You're like, oh boy, how am I going to deal with this? Yeah. How do I? So I think that's part of that's
Mm.
creativity. Like, this is what I
Mm.
get. What can I make with what I have? Right? What can I what
Yeah.
what can I create from the things, the elements that have been given? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that instead of becoming a painter, you kind of found your way into like the marketing ad agency world over time.
Hmm.
And
That
can you just
sounds
tell me
terrible.
more
That
about like
sounds terrible.
what roles were you in and what
Yeah.
lessons did you take away from your time in
Uh,
agencies, late 90s, early 2000s?
oh my God, so many, too many to mention. First of all, that I never ever want to work in marketing and advertisement. No, I started
Mhm.
working. Listen, I'm a school dropout, so I never went to university. At least I never finished university. I did a few years, 1 year, 2 years. That sounds like I went to jail, but I did a few years. I did some time, but I just didn't fit in. I have
Mhm.
dyslexia. That's part of it. But dyslexia is there's so much more than just. So in Dutch, we at that time when I was younger, we would call that word blind, right? So it's about writing, reading, and writing. But that's really just a tiny part of what we call dyslexia. But anyway, it just meant I didn't fit into the system that was provided to me. And so I never really finished school. So actually, I just started working straight away. I worked most of my life. So I had all kinds of jobs, all kinds of odd jobs in factories and stuff, and all kinds of. I learned most of what really helped me survive in business, if you will, especially in early days. I learned because I worked in factories on factory floors, and that's where I learned most of my kind of understanding of what it is to work in a large organization where you have no influence on what's happening to you, where management makes all the decisions. And I every time I'm in that situation where people talk about change and reorganizations, visions, and purpose and stuff like that, I can still see myself sitting with these guys, most of them, these guys, smoking cigarettes inside, which was still allowed, and eating sandwiches, and then complaining about the management, about those people that have on top, on upstairs, usually would say something like that, that had no clue about what was going on. Total distrust and complete disconnection. So that taught me so much. And when I started working, so my first serious job was at a telco, and I don't know why they hired me, but they hired me as a communication advisor, internal communications, and I was making communication plans for different regions, which was totally weird because I didn't study it and I didn't know what communication was really. But I just used common sense. I thought, well, I'll just go talk to everyone. And turns out that nobody ever did that. Whoa, really? And so they really like me. They're like, wow. And my advice was always, you should talk more to each other and listen to each other. And they were like, wow, that's amazing insight. And then they never did anything with it, by the way.
Mhm.
So I really had to go because I couldn't make any impact. I couldn't really
Mhm.
make any difference. And these corporate environments were not for me because I don't fit into these systems. But I like being an outsider. So I did enjoy observing it. I did enjoy playing that game for a little bit. And sort of seeing how people behave and move. I like that. I like observing. I love learning. I
Mhm.
never finished the school, but I love learning. I really love learning, and I love like life wide learning. So I like learning things that I've never heard of. I don't care about the things that are sort of more in my kind of my job description, if you will. But I
Mhm.
like to learn about all kinds of stuff, from quantum theory to, I don't know, the history of Mormons or something. Everything's interesting. That there's always a story. I love that. So I love observing. I love understanding corporate, how they work. Then anyway, then I left and started working for an agency because I was basically their client. And then they heard I wanted to leave. They said, "Oh, can you come and run our agency?" Again, I said earlier, I'm always in a movie that I don't have the script for. And I was like, "You want me to run your agency?" I never did that. Okay. And he said, "Oh, fine, let's go." The agency was founded by two script writers, copywriters, is the
Mhm.
right word. And they couldn't really run the company because they grew, they became an agency, they started hiring people, and they weren't managers, they were script writers, they were copywriters. And they asked me to do so, but they didn't really want to. So they said they wanted me to lead the company, but they didn't really want to let go because they didn't really trust me. They didn't trust anyone really with their company. And so that turned out to be not very good. So I left, and then I started working for another project, more like a government project, which was all about fiber and I don't know, all kinds of stuff, internet connections, and I don't know, something I really wasn't really interested in. But again, interested in the little world of how people move and how they work. Because I wanted to be a musician, I wanted to be an artist. I didn't have any plans of staying anywhere. So a year later, a friend of mine, good friend of mine, who was also the singer in our band, he was a partner in a communication design agency. It really is. It's still there. And he said, Arne, there were two other partners, and he said, they're going to leave, and I need someone kind of to run this company with me. And he was a really good friend. And so I said, okay, yes, so I joined him. I did that for a very long time. I became a creative director. And that was awesome because I realized that my creativity, that was really useful because every project was something we've never done before in our life. And this is around the start of the 2000s and the end of the 90s. So the dot-com crisis came, and we were still trying to figure out Flash and interactive CD-ROMs and that technology that was crappy. But clients wanted it really badly. And we're like, anyway, but it was an awesome time. I worked there for 6 years or so and doing so many different projects. But I felt that, so with my creativity, this is also where I started doing comedy, by the way. But so my creativity just always needs kind of, I know it's this energy that needs to kind of get out. And I liked working in this agency. I love the people because agencies are great. They become family, right? So because it's such a vulnerable thing to do, creative agencies. I really loved it, but I felt frustrated because as an agency, you're always the last to know what a client wants because they already decided for the solution. And all you do is kind of put a nice ribbon around it or something and make it look better, but the solution is crap, right? So, and I felt like I think I can help more if I'm part of the start of this process, or when they're still figuring out the problem instead of having the solution. That's something I wanted. So this company called Mood Factory, which is still there, still doing awesome stuff. And I couldn't really do it because they were in a communication design agency. We did campaigns and graphic design and web design and all that, which is great. But I wanted to do strategic design, and service design was just emerging from some universities, and British Design Council started talking about strategic design, I guess. And so it's kind of emerging a little bit, but there were no clients for this. And also the people that was leading a creative team with people who were graphic designers and filmmakers. And they were like, what are you talking about? So I couldn't really do those projects. So anyway, this is when I started Design Thinkers Group. That's the start with my.
So let me just pause there on the agency, on your agency life, and just during that time and at that moment of your life and career, were there any learnings from you around either what connects with and moves people emotionally, or what doesn't? So either phase of that work where you like, oh, this works, or like, well, this definitely doesn't work and we should not be doing this.
Well, on a very different scale. So not actually as an agency, that was one of the frustrations. We never really had any insight into what the end user, the consumer, the person that actually received what we created in the end and what it actually did to them. So that was actually often a big discussion with clients where we said, can we start measuring this? Can we start kind of getting some insight? Can we do some research before and after? And often they said no, because the thing is that will also uncover whether it was a failure, right? So they didn't really want it to be measured often, not always, but often. So that was one of the other things. I felt that I didn't really know. So what did happen is that what I did learn is leading a creative team and understanding how to talk to customers, because I was always the one talking to the customers about creative solutions that we had. So trying to kind of speak their language and making them understand that they could do more, or they could kind of take a little bit more risk, or make it a little bit more bold or different. And it was usually quite frustrating conversation, but I really did learn that language and how to kind of involve my customers in it, and how to make them part of it, so they could I could kind of do a little bit more, make it a little bit more special, because I made it a little bit more safe for them. But specifically working with my creative colleagues on projects, understanding how creative teams work. And so that amazing, lots of insights there, and I use it all the time. But don't forget, I played in a band and from when I was 10, 11. So I totally understand what it is to create something with a bunch of teenagers, which is the worst, but with people with different skills and different backgrounds, with different instruments, and then still producing and creating something that is sort of there, where there's some unity, some harmony, and an idea and a concept and a vision and a plan, and making it exciting, and having an audience that then, so there on that level, not for my agency work, but for my comedy, my stand-up work, and my musical work, and also obviously photography and all that. It's always you show it to people, so in your head you always go like, how do people respond? How do I connect to them? How do I so those are the being in front of an audience. That is something I've done most of my life. So I think that all that combined, I think I got a bit of I kind of learned a lot about how to reach out to people, how to kind of connect to them, and what do you need to have in place to really connect to them emotionally, for sure. Yeah. And I work with amazing, by the way, the company I worked with as a creative director, there were amazing designers there. Graphic design, I was a creative director, and I didn't study, I just told, never finished school. I didn't study design, but I work with people like my wife, who was my colleague there, but became my wife later. She studied design at the university. She, hardcore designer, right? These people, they have different skills and they know things that to me at that time was like, wow, this is amazing. They could kind of turn my thinking, my ideas, my blah, blah, blah into something that was meaningful and communicate something. And so I work with amazing designers. So that also taught me so much.
Just as parentheses here for a moment, in the last year or two, I've taken some courses online and done some education for myself. And in those communities there, I've encountered people from agencies, especially creatives, who raise a voice and say, why do I need to know the audience? Why do I need to know the market? Like, just leave me alone. I just want to do my thing. And there's, coming from the world where we live, you and I just been in such shock to just the lack of empathy and the lack of just desire of who am I serving? Like, they just don't care. And it just strikes me, these are like young people in 2022 who are saying this. And it just blows me away, just the lack of regard that I was reading into this language.
But it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable if you ask people what they want and if they like what they see. And again, this is like, it's if you're in your own bubble and your job is to make cool things and make things look pretty and design awesome stuff. And it's so nice. I know I recognize that feeling, because at the agency, although I got really frustrated after a while, but the first 2-3 years, I had a lot of fun playing around with all kinds of designs and then graphics design and experimenting within my little bubble, and then pitching to a client and then getting the job and stuff like that. And the most fun I had, and this is sort of an agency thing, is that you kind of are asked to participate in a pitch. And then you go like, okay, well, let's do it. Let's win this competition. And you go design these amazing things, and you start thinking, and usually this is psychology, you kind of start trying to understand your client. So the person that's going to say yes or no, what do we need to show that person? So it's not about understanding the end consumer. It's about understanding our client, because we have to know whether he or she, who is she, is she going to show this to his or her boss? And so how are we going to make this person look good in their organization? But that's the psychology that we're dealing with, which I turned out to be quite good in. And then you win the pitch. And you got like, yeah, we got it. And then it was like, oh shit, now we have to produce it. And we promised all these things. And
Yeah.
like most agencies, if not all agencies, will always say yes. If a client says, can you do whatever? And you'll say yes.
Mhm.
And then I said, oh, I said we could do this interactive CD-ROM thing, for instance, as one of the examples where we never produced an interactive CD-ROM, but we got this project. And so our designer also said, yeah, I can do that. No, he couldn't. So he was sweating for like 2 weeks, just like trying to figure out how to do this. So in a way, it was also fun because we managed. We always managed because we were problem solvers. In that sense, I learned to be problem solver. Like, okay, we got to do this thing now. How does that work? So let's go find out. And so I enjoyed it. So I understand sort of that safe bubble of creativity without other people saying that's, yeah, it looks pretty. I'm not going to buy it. I don't want it, or it's not what I need. Yeah, I get it. But I think, maybe it's a bit of maturity that is lacking there. So
Right now, it's bubbling up for me is a story about Mike Tyson, the champion boxer, where he was trying to do some kind of like stand-up or some comedy, something on stage. And he was just terrible. He was just bombing because he was talking about that he was wealthy and just kind of the
that's
things
funny.
that he was able.
By the way, that scene, sorry, were you talking about, you asked me what I thought is funny, but Mike Tyson doing really bad stand-up,
Bombing.
that is so funny.
Yeah, but so it was bad because what he was sharing just didn't connect with anybody because it didn't relate at all with the audience. And then later on, he got coaching. He worked on it. I think he got like a special on HBO, something like the Undefeated or whatever, some name like that, where it's actually quite relatable and quite good. And I think well, if I want to connect with people, what is it? Just knowing what's happening with the audience and being able to connect with an audience and not kind of being so abstracted in your own reality that you don't connect with anybody.
It's difficult. Right? It's not, you're right. But at the same time, I have so many examples of stand-up comedians that I like, and they are so absurd, such an absurd kind of sense of humor that where you go like that totally does not relate with my life of but it's so absurd that it's funny, but it can be okay. So it's such a vulnerable thing, and some people will love one comedian and other people will hate that comedian. So it's also very personal. Like I said, I mean, the Dutch have a kind of sense of humor that are not shared by the French. Our sense of humor is not shared by the French, I can tell you. So I go around the world and make jokes. In my job, really, so I'm not a stand-up comedian, but it's extremely important as a facilitator for me. Because if I make people laugh, I connect to them. And if I can't make them laugh, so this is a little thing I do, I go, this is where I know something's going on. I'm not connecting to them. If I can't make them laugh, I'm not connecting to them. So I need to find a way to make them laugh. And if they start smiling, it changes everything, because the comedy rule is that if you make people laugh, they open up, they become vulnerable, and then you can slip into something more serious into that opening. You go, right? So if you listen to really good comedians, they will make you laugh, and then they slip into something unexpected, or something you're like, oh shit, I didn't expect that. That makes it really funny, right? So so comedy is truth and pain. As a good friend of mine always said. It's truth and pain. And that's the thing. And so you make people laugh, and because it kind of hurts, and then you realize that you're laughing at something that you're not supposed to laugh at, and that's more funny. And so that's really cool. So if people were really good at that, but it has, in general, I'm generalizing, it has something to do with the fact that you are willing to be vulnerable. Most stand-up comedians share things that you would never share with a group of people that you don't know on a stage, or even people you do know. They will share things that you will never share. And and they share it in a way that you think it's true, right? Because obviously it's not always true, or it's not really about them or something, or it is about them and they say it's about someone else. But anyway, so they share a story and it's true. It sounds true. You're willing to believe it. And it's something no one, so it's awkward. There's a painful thing like, and then because it's so vulnerable, it makes you really vulnerable. That's also really difficult because that also means that some people will hate it, right?
Yeah.
So that goes with the territory, right? So, but it has something to do with vulnerability. That has to do, which it really is. Vulnerability is, I think, is connected to empathy. That's a key to many things when you talk about relationships and connecting to people emotionally. It's it's really in every relationship, a good relationship, positive relationship. It's about vulnerability. If you're not willing to be vulnerable, your audience, your partner, they will not be able to be vulnerable. Again, going back to psychological safe space. If you want people to be safe. So laughing at things you're not supposed to laugh at, that you have to kind of feel safe first and then catch yourself laughing at something you're like, actually you should laugh at because it's really horrible.
And yet I'll just acknowledge that the process of stand-up comedy, at least, there's a tremendous amount of failure because there's a tremendous amount of material that doesn't land, the bombs that doesn't connect. And it's this kind of brutal, because I don't have a better word for this, brutal process of bombing over and over until you find those points of connection, and then you kind of build 5 minutes that kind of, there's a consistency that people connect to, and you can have people laughing for 5 minutes. Interestingly, I interviewed a comedian a few episodes ago, and he made this beautiful distinction about that he used to go out and want to like get laughs. And at some point, some things happened, and he had this mindset shift of going from getting laughs to giving laughs. And so he was ultimately doing the same thing, but coming from a very different place. And he said that the connection and relationship with the audience was so much different and so much nicer, at least for him. And I think for the audience, when he showed up with with the spirit and the energy of wanting to give laughs and kind of serve people instead of serving his own ego and wanting to get something, extract something out of folks.
Yeah, that's a good mindset to have. It's you're bringing something. You're not trying to get something. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's a good for anyone who wants to be a facilitator or any leader, go do comedy, do stand up or improv theater or something that. So the bombing part, that iterative learning, getting out there, failing, and it's really bad, obviously, because we want people to laugh. And then they don't, and you're like naked, and you're like, So that's but again, although to be honest, so I said earlier, I think I'm just stupid or something because I never really experienced it. I failed miserably quite often, but I don't so again, this is the thing, right? Nothing really happens after that. Nothing bad happens. You just like
I thought when you fail, a tiger jumps out and attacks you. No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I thought so. Like now I'm going to die or something. There's going to be something awful. Something's going to fall on my head or nothing happens. Right. So once you've experienced that, and I think because I experienced that really at an early age when I was playing in my band, making terrible music for an audience and nothing happened, that I'm kind of relaxed on, and not that I'm not nervous, and I'm not like I go like, oh, I don't care. No, because if you don't care, it doesn't work anyway. I mean, then don't go on stage. If you don't care, don't go on stage, because that's the worst thing. You have to be nervous a little bit or a lot, but you need the tension. That's your energy. That of course, if it doesn't work, it's terrible. It's awful, but nothing happens. Nothing happens. They're fine. And often people will still come to you and say, I really enjoyed that. Nobody laughed. What do you mean? Or they think it's courageous, or they go like, and sometimes they go like, oh, that didn't really work, did it? And you're like, no.
Yeah. Well,
So
I'm gonna play
you want to have a
pretend.
beer?
I'm
Yeah.
gonna play pretend therapist here for a second because you've been sharing that you're dyslexic, so this neurodiversity.
Hmm.
And I'm going to venture, I guess, here that you have probably been learning to deal with that from a very early age because there's some expectation here, read this or do this in this way that's prescribed by the school system or what have you.
Hmm.
And that didn't track to how your brain works, right? And then you have to find the workarounds or just
Well,
accept like, yeah, this is not happening and I'm gonna do
kind of
this
funny.
differently or do it this other way. So
Actually,
my
my
guess is that you've
first
been building that muscle since you were like pretty young. What's your reaction to
well, no, so
that?
that's interesting because it reminds me because you talked about school and kind of in relationship to doing a comedy. In my head, I saw this picture because I had this oral exam for English class, and that's not my language, right? So I'm
Mhm.
Dutch, so it's a foreign language. But because I watched too many American movies, I was kind of okay with that, but I have dyslexia, so I can write and this exam. So that's just sort of where I and actually, oh no, this was actually my Dutch. I know it's my Dutch. Oh yeah, it's the Dutch one because we had to read a book. Yeah, that's the thing. We had to read a book, and then we had the exam, and we had to talk about the book. Yeah, that's the thing. All right, yeah, that's the memory. Oh my God, because the English actually exam went fine. That which to her surprise, she said,
Mhm.
you can speak English. Why did you? Why did you fail at the other tests? Because I didn't tell them I had dyslexia. Anyway, but my Dutch exam or exam, so I had to talk about the book, and I obviously didn't read the book. It's a horrible book, and I didn't read it. So all of a sudden, it's like having this stand-up comedy gig, and the only person in the audience is my teacher, and I totally bomb. That's what's the so yes. So to which happened, I was like, I started.
Mhm.
What on earth in my mind convinced me that I could go into an exam, talk about a book that I didn't read. How would that work? I was making up the story. It's like, so what happened to the main character? And I would go like, well, he was yeah, because he was living in this town and then he had trouble with his mother and his teacher, like, that's not in the book. You're just making this up. And like, yeah, I
Mhm.
didn't read the book. But how did I can't imagine what I was thinking. But anyway, that was my first comedy show, my first stand-up
Mhm.
gig that totally backfired. Yes, that's
Yeah.
true. I failed many times. And so, yeah, maybe it's true.
Well,
I'm pretty sure it's true. Being
yeah.
able to failing and not fitting in and people going like, yeah, no, I had that so many times. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I
Yeah.
always felt awkward. Like I said, I always feel that I'm in a movie that I don't belong in. And people go,
Mhm.
you're not supposed to be in this movie. And
Mhm.
nobody ever says that. So, no,
Mhm.
can you go out of the, you're in this show. Go. You're not even an extra. Go away. No, they go like, yeah, it's your turn to talk. Like, what? Where's my script?
Yeah.
So that's how I
Well, I'm
feel.
gonna pick up here the history thread on the journey to creative leadership. And so you get to around mid 2000s, around 2007, and you start this design thinkers group, which
Yep.
evolved into this kind of global community, global agency. And I think you already started to talk about this, but so what exactly prompted you to make the shift from you were doing this agency life, this agency work to doing consulting with organizations where you're applying this design thinking or this service design,
Hmm.
as it's also known, to solving complex challenges with leaders and teams?
Good question. Looking back, I really jumped into this unknown space that was unknown for me and from everyone really. But I felt that I was at home there at that time, and it changed. So we're not talking about the same design thinking and service on it as we understand it now. At that time, it was sort of for me a liberating thing because I heard about service design and I'd been doing some projects using those principles and developing some of the tools with my previous agency, Mood Factory. And then but that didn't really work. And then I started my own company. And I felt that design thinking, the way I understood it, because I just heard, and I didn't know anything about like IDEO, and because that wasn't my world. I just heard from a Stanford professor that there was this thing they called at Stanford design thinking. And it was sort of, and the way he described it sounded like it's sort of this thing in between all these boxes, these expertises. So there's space in between. And I thought, that's where I live. It has a word. So this is the power of language, right? You need language to talk about something, and that makes it real. So if there are words that describes something, then all of a sudden it exists. That's our brain. It's an amazing human skill, right? We can create something out of thin air by just giving it a name. And all of a sudden it was there. And I thought, this is where I live. So I 2004 or so, and I looked up whether there was a company that was named that way. There wasn't. Design Thinkers. I don't know, pretty cool name. And then I was going to do service design. But so what prompted me was, like I said, I really wanted to create meaningful impact. And I felt that I could do it better when I'm involved in the beginning of a process of finding sort of first the problem and then a solution. And I didn't really understand it the way I understand it now, but I intuitively felt that was where I needed to go. So, but also seeing myself as an artist, I was quite willing to create an experimental organization. So I was saying, I want to do it very different. Let's go try something else. Let's do something kind of network organization without contracts, just based on trust. And let's see if that works. And to me, that was sort of just my artistic muscle. That's how I see it. It's like I'm just going to sketch something, and then something will emerge, and I'll see what comes out of that, and I'll create this thing. That work I didn't intended it to work because I didn't know where it was going, but I like an emergent approach where I like to see how things emerge. So that was really cool. But I just wanted to be free. I wanted to create a space where I could be myself, where I didn't have to be in a box, where I could be all the things that I'm interested in, all my skills I could use. Like if it came from photography, from painting, from music, from comedy, from whatever my experience working in corporates at an agency, leading teams, I wanted all those things to be able to kind of be used, be meaningful in that space. And so I could create my own space. I said, okay, that's my own space. So that's what drove me. It was in a way, very selfish. It's like I wanted to be a space. But also that I knew, because I was already developing communities before. I was kind of using social media platforms. There was a platform called Ning. I don't know if it's still there, but I already created this community of creatives from all kinds of different, diverse group of creatives, from fashion, from all kinds of, and that actually became the Design Thinking Network, what it is now. And so I kind of already played around with communities, and social media made all what I just talked about, made that all possible. Twitter, when I was there in 2006, 2007, that's when it started emerging. And all of a sudden there was this tool I could reach out to everyone. So directly, I didn't have to phone their office or send them an email or a letter. I could just go like, hey, what do you think about this? Or I could just respond to something that they were saying. And so that turned out I'm a really bad networker. I hate these network parties because I'm always the lonely guy standing in the back with a Coca-Cola. I'm never waiting and hoping that someone would talk to me, because I'm, in that sense, I'm a total introvert, and I don't fit. This is part of dyslexia. I don't interact with people the way other people can. So, and this is the problem with, that's neurodiversity, right? Neurodiversity is that a lot of people think they have to behave in a certain way. And it seems like everybody just does it. They go through school, they do these things, they talk to people, and you feel like, why can't I do that? That's weird. That's normal behavior, and I can't do it, right? So that's how I always feel. And so I created this space for myself first, but I also knew already that if I'm interested in something, if I feel that something is great or should work, there are always other people. And because of social media, the chances of finding a few people became a lot bigger, because I could reach out globally. And yes, and internationally, I found people who were interested in design thinking and service design and all the stuff we were talking about. So this early community was able to kind of connect globally, because nationally there were hardly anyone, maybe few people, but not enough. So we can really create a community, and that community became Design Thinkers Group. and Design Thinkers group is still there. And even though I left a couple of years ago, because it's based on trust and connections, and it's really it was an amazing experience and experiment. I learned so much of, and I met so many people like you, which is awesome, like amazing. So it's like, wow, that happened. And that's such a great way of building a company. Anyway, yeah.
Hey, random aside, did you by chance watch the last Avatar movie?
No.
No? Oh, okay. There's a character, a teenage girl character that's kind of very different. So at some point she's complaining like, why can I just be normal and just get along with people and kind of do what everybody else is? Like, I feel so weird. And I was sitting in the theater. I'm like, oh man, you're speaking to me right now. I feel so seen.
Yeah. But the thing is that if you, this is what I've learned. If I say that, then all of a sudden, all these other people who feel the same start emerging, because you're not alone. It's just that nobody's shared it. And so again, this is about being sort of courageous enough and vulnerable enough to say, hey, I have this. So for instance, I will always share, always when I have a talk, when I also on the podcast, I will always share that I have dyslexia, because I know there's so many young people out there with dyslexia who struggle with this. My daughter has dyslexia. So I make sure I always say so. And I get a lot of people who are so happy about that, but it can be on a different level. So I ran this facilitators training just a couple of days ago. And there's this group of people, they're all really experienced professionals, corporate people, really smart people. I'm always like, what can I teach you? Is there, why would I? But anyway, so I teach them facilitation, and what they do, they take turn in facilitating a session that they have prepared, design, and then facilitate. And then they get feedback from everyone, from all the participants and from me and my co-facilitators, coaches. And so there's this moment where this guy, this big guy, really, if you see him, you're very so confident. And also the way he facilitated was confident, calm, and it went really well. And so the feedback was from the participants, yeah, you're so secure and you took it really so calm and you knew what you were doing. He said, my t-shirt is wet from fear. I sweated. I'm so nervous. I couldn't sleep at night. That is, to me, first of all, that's one of those moments I go, oh, I really like this job, because that's such a, no, but that's so meaningful. And, but what I wanted to say is that the other participants were like, oh, you too? I didn't know that. Like, I thought, because me too. My God. Yeah. It's so, right. So that is, so share these moments, share that, share these feelings. And this is also, if you talk about comedy, those are the things people want to hear. And then they're willing to take that journey with you and to listen to your stories. And then you can get them. And you go like, ha. Now you're laughing at something that you really wasn't supposed to laugh at, because I slipped in something ugly and you're like, oh, he got me. But you make people feel safe by sharing real things, real. So this is why I teach storytelling, by the way. This is why the courses I'm setting up now, I just run a couple of them, is storytelling. Because that's it.
Yeah. Well, let me revisit here the topic of facilitation, because we touched on it along our journey so far together. And let me just hone in on this. So in your experience, what additional color can we add here to this question? Like, what does a facilitator need to do or be to be effective at fostering collaboration among people and opening them up to new possibilities?
Yeah, well, I think the main thing is that you, as a facilitator, we call it sort of, you're on this meta level. So you step out. So you're not in front of the group, you're behind the group, you're in the back, you're observing. And and then you report to them. You look at their behavior, you sense the energy, and you say things like, hey, there's a bit of low energy. Am I right? And people go like, oh yeah, I felt that too. Yeah. Okay. Maybe we need whatever, an exercise or a break or something. Or you see that people are not talking to each other or not paying attention or sitting back or watching their phone. So you observe behavior, you recognize certain patterns, and you report back to them. That reporting about the things that you see and feel is when you're not that experienced, it's really difficult, because you think, first of all, you don't have those antennas yet. And often you think it's just you, or it's your fault or something, like I'm doing something wrong because they don't like it or something. But by having the courage to share that feeling or that observation or just a thought that you had, you make it possible to talk about it, to make it explicit, and then it either you can solve it, and then either maybe you did something wrong and they just didn't tell you, because often people say they're because they're too polite, or depending on the culture where you are, but often people are too polite, or they think, well, whatever, just go through the thing. And but it's your job as a facilitator to make things explicit that are implicit. And that means you have to kind of recognize the implicit things that are there, and nobody's talking about them, or nobody's pointing at it, or that's the foundation of good facilitation. If you do that, if you can't do that, it becomes really difficult, because it becomes very difficult to start. You become a moderator maybe, but not a facilitator.
That's a
the
good
difference.
distinction. Yeah. Something that's bubbling up for me based on our conversation, and then especially talking about the stand-up, is, and I've been working on this, I noticed this on myself, if I'm showing up with any desire to look good, that's bad energy for facilitation. If I'm showing up to just serve and connect with people, connect the dots, connect people to each other, that's so much better. But whenever I'm like, there's this ego stuff, oh, I need to look good, I'm like, that's just the wrong energy. And then it does it. And then it doesn't connect. It doesn't really connect with people all that deeply.
Exactly. You talk about being your authentic self, which is like, it's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. I mean, if you're not, because people will know that you're pretending to be something else, or when you pretend not to be nervous, but you are nervous, they'll know. And that makes it really painful. I always compare this to if you go and, so for instance, talk about playing in the band, right? So, and suppose you go to see a good friend or a nephew or a brother says, play in a band, and he, she, or whatever plays guitar. And it's just not, it's really insecure, and is it out of tune? And you feel like they don't really know what they're doing. That's horrible to watch. Like it can go wrong anytime, that kind of feeling. That's what you get when you're a facilitator and you pretend to be someone else. You pretend to not be nervous, or you pretend to know things you actually don't know. And so obviously, like playing music, it's rehearse, practice just until you don't think about it anymore. So it's not like you can't just do that, right? But if you've never done that, if you've never been a facilitator and all of a sudden you're in front of a group, but at least say so, right? Even with the music, I mean, if they say like, look, I haven't been playing guitar very long, and so we're going to be out of tune every now. Sorry, but it's so much better than you're kind of, they pretend to be this professional when they're not. And just be honest, be open, be vulnerable. It's okay. We get it. Right. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be an awesome facilitator or an awesome musician. No, of course not. But at least we know it's okay. And people will help you. People will help you, because the session is not about you. You're the facilitator. The session is about the group. Yeah. They need to do something, and you're just helping them do something. Otherwise, if you turn it all about you and your insecurity, that makes no sense. It's not about you. You're just there to help them, right? And with whatever skill you have. And so, if you never facilitated, or you're really insecure about it, you haven't practiced, just say so. But then say, but I'm going to help you with whatever I can. I'm going to help you. So I have this thing and I have a plan, but tell me when it doesn't work, because I'm going to help you. And then you can check in with the group all the time. Say, how's it going? And we'll go, I'm okay, because I said, if I screw up, please tell me, okay? Can someone help me, or can somebody maybe assist me who has a lot of experience with these kind of situations? Oh, you do? Oh, okay, come on. Can you help me a little bit? I don't know, just people want to help. And again, you need a bit of maturity. So to be honest, I also think you have to go through these you have to bomb every now and then. So in a way, I have to say, because I hear myself trying to kind of pretend that you can just be vulnerable straight away if you don't know what you're doing. To be honest, it's going to be shit. It's going to be terrible, and people are going to hate you. and you're going to be out of tune, literally and
Yeah.
figuratively. You're going to be out of tune, and it's going to be terrible. It's going to happen. Then you go home, you're like, oh, that's terrible. And what you do need, make sure, because even if you're an expert and I make mistakes, I've done sessions not too long ago with all the experience I had that went horribly wrong for whatever reason. I mean, because I didn't prepare well enough, I was too tired, or there was something else I totally missed because the people in the room didn't really want to be there, and their boss told them to be there, and they weren't really interested, and they just had to go through that training or something. And that irritated me. So I wasn't willing to kind of go the extra mile to actually convince them that maybe it was a good idea. So it turned out into this terrible thing. That happens. But if you then go to your colleagues after or the day after or after the session, you want to have a support team, a team that says, hey, because you go out there and be vulnerable. So you need to have what we call this warm bath, this safe space, either with friends, colleagues, people who kind of say, yeah, happened to me too. Hey, come, we'll have a coffee or something, right? And they talk about that, because as a facilitator, it's actually it's a scary world out there. Well, it is a little bit. You don't know what's going to happen, right? Because there can be all kinds of things. So be kind to yourself and let others be kind to you too, because you deserve it, because you've been out there, and that's courageous and it's amazing, right? And we all fail all the time. It happens to all of us, no matter how experienced you are, right? So yeah, be kind to yourself.
And I think I'm going to make a segue here to creative leadership, because I think a lot of what we have been talking about and good facilitation and being in a good state, in a good place to do effective facilitation and serving people and helping people, and it's not about you and so forth. Those are also really good traits of leaders to embody in many ways. I think really good leaders are facilitators, right? Because they're facilitating talented people to achieve something. And I know this creative leadership is one of your passions. So let's just start on that topic. Can you tell me, what do you mean by creative leadership, and why is creative leadership important in your view?
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about creative leadership. Actually, it's probably the main thing we talked about, because I think that facilitative leadership and creative leadership, I think that's very similar. Creative leadership is all about stretching the boundaries of what people thought was possible, right? And creating that safe space by being a servant leader, and by asking the people that you lead, am I doing a good job? Have I created that environment for you so you can flourish, instead of judging them, giving them ownership, and having the courage to let go. It's leadership by letting go. You work with adults. They're not children. Unless you work with children, then they're children. Yes. But anyway, so I'm talking about people who do not work with children. We treat people like children. They go to their office, and they have to be there at a certain time and leave at a certain time. And anyway, there's so many elements. This is industrial age, industrial revolution kind of mindset. People clock in, clock out. These people are they're adults. They're home. Maybe they have a family. Maybe they have children. They have to pay the mortgage. They take care of stuff. They take care of people. They're adults. They're serious people. They know what they're doing. And then they go to their job, and they're being treated as children. That is still what's happening. And hey, it turns out we don't like it. So I don't know how many percent, but it was 80, 90% of people working in large corporates are unhappy in their job. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. We kind of pretend that's normal. It's like, okay, you have your work-life balance, that's work, and then you have life. No, you have life. There's only life. Work is life too. We fool ourselves. There's one conspiracy theory. I like conspiracy theories, by the way. There's awesome. Anyway, but if there's one thing, I think it is kind of, because we fool ourselves. It's not like there's some kind of bigger, kind of weird kind of community of weird people. I think we fool ourselves. One conspiracy theory we created for ourselves is this idea that there's that there's work and there's life,
Yeah.
that these are two separate things. That's nonsense. That's just a way to keep us unhappy and stay in a job. That's so disappointing. I mean, in the US, you talk about the great resignation. We don't want to go back to cubicles. First of all, who works in cubicles? Are you crazy? They do still in America. I know that. For me, that's like, really? You just, that's weird. No, so people want to be happy. Yeah, that's a strange word to use. Happy at work. We don't, why not? You go through life. You have one life. Your job in life is not your job. That's finding out who you really are, I think. If there's one thing in life, your one task in life is to kind of understand you and accept yourself. That's the thing to do. And sitting in a cubicle and a terrible job, being unhappy, that's really, and I know, I mean, we have a long way to go to fix all that, but we have to go that way. We're going that way. We're going to fix that, and it might take 100 years. I don't know. But if you look at sort of long term, and we have to think long term, not short term, that's where we're going. And I don't know. Why am I saying this? So what was the question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you know what? Just in reaction to what you're saying, something's bubbling up for me is I wonder if it's really about being happy at work or if there's a very strong component about being expressed at work. Like I was hearing about your frustrations around your creativity being kind of bound or contained or limited in the agency life, and then creating an environment where all of that
totally.
can be
Of course.
expressed.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, but I mean, happiness is a weird kind of concept. I mean, you can't be happy all the time. We never, I mean, this is impossible, right? So there are moments of happiness, but to your point, I think it has something to do with being able to feel that you have some meaningful activity, meaningful impact.
Because what does being happy at work mean? Is it somebody just throwing some extra money at you? I mean, it's nice, but then I know people who make a lot of money and they're still miserable.
Yeah.
Is it having a champagne fountain at work like these tech startups do? Is that it? I don't think that's it either.
Short-term happiness, sure, but these are, I mean, things like buying a new iPhone might make you happy for a day, and then the second day you go like, it's the same month, it's the same phone, it just costs a lot of money. No, but you're right. But there's a moment of happiness. That's short, kind of little moments of happiness. Those are the things that make us addicted to buying stuff and champagne fountains. But that's not true happiness. I mean, long-term happiness is about this feeling of belonging. So I think there's a few human needs that we have. The real human needs that we have that haven't changed throughout human history. No matter how much research we do, human needs have never changed, really. It's health. It's trying to stay healthy and live life, right? So health is an important thing. And then comes, so health has food, shelter, all that stuff. But that's the category of being healthy, safety, healthy. And the other thing is around what happiness. So is about being sort of, and that is connectedness to being belonging to something, to a group, to something. So we're always trying to find community. We are what do you call that? We're tribes. We're tribal people, right? So that's sort of that's what we are always looking for. What's my tribe? And so work can be a tribe. So so the agencies, the creative agencies I worked at were tribes. We were family. That made me happy because we had fun and we cared about each other. We helped each other, and I was helped by people. It was my support network. So having a group of people around you that support you, that listen to you, that are genuinely interested in you, and you can help them, and you can really make feel, etc. That feeling, I think that is something that is really powerful. And what we're forgetting in companies and businesses, that it's not about money, it is about belonging to something.
And let me build on that, because it's yes to all of that. And has there been a time when at work, in whatever period point of history in your life, you made something just really awesome that landed really well? Like, what was that feeling like?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I kind of described that a little bit earlier, where I would create sort of an environment for people to share things
Yeah.
meaningful and where they say, wow, that really changed something for me. So I created a space that can be training, it can be a session around a certain topic, like which is these storytelling sessions where people felt something really change for them. So I design, but I also design. So you can design on different levels. And I discovered that I'm an organizer. So I design community. So my topic right now, also when I work for larger corporates, is creating learning communities. That really changes something because people see that they're not alone. There you get your social proof, right? So there's other people that are also like me or think like me or are also struggling like me. That is meaningful. And something that and that has something to do with the Design Thinkers group. So for instance, there's a team, one of the teams of a Design Thinkers group in the Design Thinkers Academy, like in, let's say, South Africa, right? Run by my good friend, Robert Plum. He got married. They got a baby, one beautiful, wonderful. And they make money to live and feed the family and stuff, have a house and stuff like that and all that, just have their income through something that I made up, Design Thinkers. And that to me is like, and even if I'm not even part of the company anymore, it's like, well, that to me, it gives me that's such satisfying feeling that I really did something that made something possible for people. Not, I mean, he could have worked anywhere, but this is his company. But just that fact that the simple thing that people lead a life and through something that I made up, right? So that to me, that's so rewarding, and so I feel
I
so
mean,
honored.
listen, like the story of the giant Norwegian guy that hugged you, that landed. I felt like the emotion
Yeah,
behind that. I think if that happened to me, a little tear might have welled up here at the corner of my eye.
me too, for sure. Yeah, totally.
Because it's
Yeah,
like, wow, this person, there's this transformation that's seen and rippling through
yeah,
the rest of his life. That's amazing.
yeah. That's the thing.
You know?
So there's something happening that I'm not part of. Then I did something and it
Mm,
lives on, right? So it's
mm,
like we started the Wednesday Web Jam, for instance, when the pandemic started, to
mhm,
kind of create a community of people who wanted to learn how to kind of create meaningful connections online and
mhm,
learn about technology and learn about community and all that. I haven't been part of that for a long time, and it still goes. It's still there's a community of people that found each other. So there's one of the people who run these sessions, Jimena, she's from Mexico. She came to the Netherlands
mhm,
and she took a trip and meeting people from the webcam. And I started something and it created these connections and I'm not
mhm,
part of it anymore. And it just lives on. I like to
mhm.
step, like a good friend of mine and colleague and also yours, Mark Bullock, he called me this, he always said, I keep repeating the story he told me about me. He said, "Yeah, you're this guy. You're on the beach and you start this fire, and then there's all these people joining, and I come in and then people go like, hey, where's Arne?" And then I'm still on the beach, but further away, and I'm starting another fire. And it was like, why is he there? And I'm starting another fire, and there's people coming, and some of them it's the same people, and sometimes it's new people, and I really enjoy that. And then but I like then seeing that fire in the distance and
Mhm.
seeing people enjoying the fire, and it creates value for them.
Yeah.
And even though I don't get any value from it, money, I mean, or whatever, but the value for me is that they actually it does something to them. It helped them
Yeah.
with something, or it created something for them. It was meaningful to them.
Mm.
I don't know. That's something yeah, that I really enjoy. So the big Norwegian hugging me is saying, "My wife's very happy with you because he is seeing me change."
That's awesome.
So now he's in Norway. I'm not there when he's
Mhm.
kind of using these new discovered skills or that I taught him. But this just idea that I made it, there's someone in Norway. I haven't even met his wife. I didn't know.
Mhm.
Right? So that makes me happy. Yeah, we talk about happiness. That
Yeah,
makes me
that's awesome. Well, I know, Arna, that you have created and run and offered creative leadership programs. You coach creative leadership. So to concretize some ideas here for listeners, what are some practice? I mean, we've talked about this, but let's concretize some thoughts here for listeners. What are some practices for somebody in a leadership position who wants to grow or improve as a creative leader, somebody who's working with their teams to make something awesome, hopefully, for the people that they're serving? What would you say? What would be like 3, 4, 5 things that you would recommend to a person? Somebody reaches out and asks you that question.
So the first, it starts with you yourself. It starts with empathy for yourself. Because if you are not kind of open, if you're not connected to yourself and you're not open, no one can get in. I don't know, was it Brené Brown who said that? Probably. So read Brené Brown books. Understand your own. I'm not saying become a superhuman and this totally come. Right. No, understand your own limitations. Go to where your limitations are and just know they're there. That's empathy. It's also not sympathy. No, it's empathy is like understand your own barriers, your own fears, or what you can do, what you can't do. That's first. That will allow you to kind of share that. So the other thing is, how then do you share those things? I think storytelling is really important. So create, write down, or whatever, draw, whatever you do, your origin story. Because what shaped you? Just start with transition moments in your life. So there's so many moments of transition, right? From one job to another job, from one school to another school, or school dropping out of school, or relationships, or it can be work or private. It doesn't have to be all work related. Moments of transition. Your parents, right? Who were your parents? Where are they? What have they done? How did you grow up? So I spoke to a lady in one of my podcasts a couple of years ago, 2 years ago. Yeah, that's a couple. So she grew up with parents that were always traveling. I think her father worked at an embassy or something like that. But so anyway, so they were all over the planet all the time. That's how she grew up. That has total impact on who she is now. I had a conversation with someone the other day she's a designer and she's interested in end of life, sort of what happens when you pass away, and actually in those moments before, and can't we design that? And she was all about that. So that moment, that transition moment, and she was all about transition moments. And then she talked about her past, and she grew up in East Germany, and she was 10 when the wall came down. And I said, "Oh, that's why you're so interested in these kind of ending of things." And she said, "Oh, never thought about that. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Yeah. Oh." So just to say that if you create that origin story, so you know why you struggle with certain things, or why you are good or bad at certain things, or why you behave in a certain way, why certain things get you irritated or unhappy or happy, or what have you. So why do you respond to people in a certain way? Because that's your relationship to other people. There's an explanation to it there in your origin story. So that's a really good thing. And then, so in your origin story, you can collect all these little stories, anecdotes. It can be little things, it can be big stories, but these can be stories about change or stories about what you stand for. But these are your stories. So don't don't tell people stories that you heard from like Steve Jobs, or here are the 7 behaviors of what. No, it's your stories. Because if it's your story, then it's authentic, then it connects to people, then you're vulnerable and you're a human being, and you create a safe space for other people to share their stories. So those are the things, I think those are the most important things. It's storytelling, your origin story, going back to who you are, empathy with yourself. And then it's truly learn to listen, listening to people and asking, and simple things like ask open-ended questions. Don't tell people so if you want to know what people think, ask them, what are you thinking? Well, can you tell me more about that? Ask open, have real interest in people. If you're not really genuinely interested in what people think, again, you don't create a safe space. And the last thing I want to share is a simple trick. I'll go from big things to a very small thing, something that has really interesting, impact, and more impact than you would kind of expect, is a very simple trick I always teach in if I get a chance, especially in leadership and in facilitation, and we call that 5 seconds of silence. So I will, for instance, you have a meeting, you have a conversation, you show maybe a PowerPoint presentation, because I don't know why we do that, but people do. They show it, and then they'll say, okay, anyone, any comments about this? Anyone? No? Okay, so next slide. So do this. Instead of that, do this. Okay, so anyone, any questions about this or comments? And then wait longer even, let the silence sit. Someone will start talking, because someone will go like, yeah, I have a, so, and that change is not just the fact that you are actually really interested in questions, you get questions and you give people the time to respond, and it changes the rhythm of your talking, of your presentation. It feels different. It's a different flow. And people who are maybe more introvert or can also have a chance to actually speak up. And so this is a simple trick, but try it.
Yeah. So definitely on board with this. I mean, it's just the truth that you have to start from the inside out with creative leadership, like really do the internal work first, right? Really pay attention to that and be very deliberate about that. And as the leaders doing that and hopefully growing and evolving, looking at the outside, what can they do externally in their space, in their physical space, in the online space, to foster that connection and creativity among the teams that they're leading?
Yeah, so on a very practical level, just designing your sessions differently. I mean, I think there's some very simple tricks you can do. You can make sure that, for instance, everyone is able to share. For instance, a session. I did a session once with a team. So there's a team of people, and there's their managers also there, and they're planning to do this project. And they asked me to help them kind of assess whether the project is going to work or not, which is okay, fine. Anyway, so I asked them, okay, don't talk, but everyone writes down a number between 0 and 10 is perfect, 0 is no chance. How successful that this project is going to be. Just write a number down, whatever the number is. Don't speak, don't talk. And they, and then we said, okay, show me what you wrote down. And everyone had like a 3 or a 4, except for the manager. He had a 9. Like, it's gonna work. And he was shocked. He was like, oh. And we're like, yeah, but we never really talked about it, because you're miles ahead of us, because you're always 6 steps ahead of us. This typical manager, typical leader, who is always 6 steps ahead of everyone else with good intentions. I mean, it was a really good guy. I really like him, but they just never really took the time. And this is a trick you call like share of voice, like all these. Make sure you have that share of voice designed into whatever conversation you're having, and be conscious of the kind of conversation you need to have. What outcome do you want? What kind of conversation do you need to have? Because sometimes maybe you just want to have a yes or no conversation, like this or that, this. Okay, good. Sometimes that's useful. But if you want to connect and build on each other's ideas, you need to have the right conversation to actually do that. So simple tricks like don't talk individually, write it down, then share means that everyone can pitch in, everyone can be part of the conversation. No one is left out, right? And then you can talk about these things. You say, oh, that's interesting. Why did you write down a 3? Why that's right. So why, sir, did you write down a 9? He said, because it's going to be amazing. Because I have it all worked out. Like, okay, but I see a gap. Is it? Yeah, me too. So anyway, that's a little trick, but but the philosophy behind it, that's what it is. This is just a way you can execute it, conversation, but the philosophy of make sure that there's this kind of the opportunity for everyone, that all you're using all the brains in the room, that, and that there's a diversity. So diverse, we talk about diversity, diverse teams. It sometimes I work in companies like I work in a bank or something, and then the group seems to be like made up of all of the similar people. Like they're all the same. They're all the same people working at banks. And okay, can even be like the group of white middle-aged men, right? So they're all the same. But if you really pay attention and you really listen to them and you ask and you pay attention to who they all have different stories. I'm not saying they're the most diverse group, but they are way more diverse than you think they are, because they all have completely different stories. So neurodiversity is always there. You don't have to have like a dyslexic outsider like me you don't have to have a fashion designer plugged into this group of bankers to get, I mean, sure, it's great, but because it's just an intervention and it's inescapable, because it's also visual, all of a sudden there is someone there's someone with purple hair, right? But you don't have that opportunity always. But I just know that if you get to know people, their insights really for sure, and build empathy with them, and they can open up, there is diversity. That's the other thing. So how to do it? By allowing other people to be their authentic self as well. Then you'll find that everybody's different and everybody has different experiences and grew up differently with different parents and et cetera, right? So I think that's the looking for diversity, even if you think it's not there, it's there. And you do that by allowing people to share a voice, kind of with that share voice, allowing them to speak up. I think that's probably the most important thing.
Something that really struck me that I want to amplify for ourselves and the listeners is what you were just saying about paying attention. Because I was thinking about what you were sharing earlier about the photography and kind of sensing, like paying attention to what's happening and then anticipating, when these people get to this point, they'll laugh, something like that's going to happen. And so we're talking about listening, and I think listening is part of kind of the bigger umbrella of paying attention and paying very close attention. I mean, not just hearing words that somebody's speaking at you, but kind of use the entire nervous system to see what's happening, kind of reading the room.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's going on.
Listening, we often don't, because exactly to what you were saying, but also you have all these biases in your head, right?
Yeah.
And you have them. We all have them. And this is something I've learned from comedy as well. By the way, you have a stage personality. And if you go on stage, people will judge you in like 3 seconds. They decide who you are, if they like you or not. So you have to be really conscious of your stage personality. And also if you come on stage and you wear an expensive watch, that's really odd for people, because or if you don't do anything with it, right? It just, because it has to be, it's part of who you are. They'll judge you straight away. People don't even know they do that, but they do it. So people will judge you straight away. They make a decision. And so we all do that. We don't know whether we're doing that. So if you have a conversation, there's biases. You have all these ideas somewhere floating around in your brain about that person. So being able to park them and say, and just be conscious of the fact that you're doing that, but you're going to listen, because there's going to be a story that's going to change your mind about that person. Whomever you meet, whatever you think about that person, whether you think you're going to totally disagree with that person, because whatever your opinion about that person, I know for a fact that if you really listen and you get to know them, you are going to change your mind about that person, because there's a story you don't know, and there's always a story. There's always a story. Even people you go like, no, there's a horrible. Go and get to know these people, and then you'll know like, they're human beings and they care about. And so a little story about this, which was really powerful for me. So I ran a conference for a few years, and the design thinking conference, and one of the speakers I invited was a young lady so her job was to disarm rebels and terrorists.
Mhm.
We were like, what do you mean? Yeah, she worked for her, she had her own organization, but she usually worked for the UN. And she would go into like Iraq and Syria and places like that and talk to people we think of as these rebels or these terrorist groups, and to disarm them. So, so she said, "Listen, you can't go into the tent of some warlord and then say, 'Give me your guns, give me your weapons.' You have to kind of create a relationship of trust." And she said, and so here you go. There's this person that did horrible things, some kind of terrorist leader or something. And then she said, "It's really interesting. I've met many of these people. From maybe the 50, 60 people I met, maybe one was evil, truly evil, maybe one or two. The others did evil things, but when you get to know them and create a relationship with them, first of all, they were always very kind. They were normal. They gave you tea, coffee. They had children. They were nice to their dog. They had funny stories and anecdotes. They were kind and gentle. And then when you listen to their stories, you start hearing these moments of where they took these micro decisions, and that kind of led them slowly to this path. And they ended up in a tent in Syria, leading this group of men and doing horrible things. And they just found themselves there as well. So she said, that's really, so she did these games with us where you have to make some decisions, things like, okay, so you're on a train, and they're on the track, there's a homeless person lying on the track. If you go to the right, but if you go take the train to the left, and the left track, there's a group of school children. What do? You're going to kill the homeless person, can't you? That's okay. That's a little decision you just made. Okay, you just killed the homeless person. Okay, and then she went on, and you go like, oh my God. Like, right. Okay, can you stop doing this? Because it's like, I don't want to go here. Right. So, and she said that's sort of there, and there's like many of these moments in their lives that kind of slowly put them in this, like kids in a gang, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Or people doing evil things because they're pressured by a group. This is what gangs do, right? So if you don't do what we tell you, we are going to hurt your family. Your little sister, we know where she is. We know where your mother lives. We're going to hurt them. If you don't do what we say, what do? You do what they say. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess is understanding people and pay attention to story.
Yeah. I got to hurting little sisters. So
well,
sorry about
Arne,
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I need to move us along, but I want to acknowledge that now you're moving down the proverbial beach, starting another fire, and soon enough you'll be launching the Future Skills Academy.
Yes.
And this is in a moment when we're living through significant technological shifts that include artificial intelligence, the eventual automation of many types of jobs. So what do you think are the important skills to cultivate for the future, given all this technology?
Yeah. So, and I'm interested in the skills that are not things like prompt engineering, right? Or stuff like that. They're temporary, might be interesting, and who knows? But I'm really interested in the human skills that we need to not just only be future ready, but kind of that connects to a sort of a future scenario and so the first skill, the first thing that I think that especially companies, leaders, organizations need to learn is creating future scenarios, alternative future scenarios, because we don't know the future and no one can predict it, and no one knows, and no company knows what's going to happen in the next 5 years. So they're all nervous. So what we need to do is kind of create an understanding of possible scenarios, and based on those scenarios, you're going to go back and sort of backwards engineering, say, so what kind of skills do I actually need to be that organization in that scenario? Now, I think a lot of research is being done, right? So, and so so I can, there's a little list, and it has something to do with creative thinking, critical thinking, and those kind of skills. Those are the skills we need to have as a future, things around empathy, social intelligence, emotional intelligence, those kind of things. Those are the things that we need, because not just because they are future skills, but it's just because we forgot to develop them, because they were also skills we needed in the past. It's not like we didn't need them in the past. It's just that we forgot about them. And now everything that can be kind of replaced by an algorithm will be replaced by an algorithm. So you can think, what cannot be replaced by an algorithm? These are things around human connection. So I think specifically creative thinking and critical thinking. And to be honest, critical thinking is sort of has my attention right now, because I think those are the things you really need, because you can tell, like, and again, I can't predict the future either, but what I can see now happening is that if you want to have an answer, any answer really, you can get it. You can go chat GPT, give me an answer to this thing, boom, you get an answer. Fine. Answers are easy. Questions are difficult. What do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want? So you can ask AI, and this is just at the start, right? So you can imagine that we can get any answer we want, but we have to know what we want. So we don't teach people questions. We teach people to respond to answers, start to questions and give them answers. We teach people to give answers. At school, you get a question, you can't change the question, and we're going to test you whether you get the right answer. I think that's we have to flip that. We have to teach our children and ourselves to ask better questions and to be critical of the answers that we get and ask more questions. So I think those are the main skills. So first, understand how to create scenarios for the future, understand what skills you need to build that future, and ask questions. And so, because I have kids that go to school and they're not being taught. They're being tested on answers, but we're like, answers are easy.
Well,
so
that
chat GPT, sorry.
Yeah, no, and let me build on that, because there's the questions, but the other thing that I become more cognizant of over time is that we're drowning in information, we're drowning in data, right?
Exactly.
And leaders, I need more data, more data. And I just been having this conversation recently. I said to somebody, a project that may possibly come through, I said, okay, we can collect all the data we want, and then we have to make some choices. And who's going to make the choice, and what's the process of making the choice? And tying this back to the photography and the music and the creative choices. How do you make a choice? Preferably a good choice. And some choices are going to fail. And we need to build the tolerance for, we're going to some things are not going to work.
Yeah.
But just the skill of making good choices. I mean, what's your take on that, and really pulling in on all your creative and then experience?
Yeah, I would reframe that. I don't, because I do sort of making good choices. I think that would scare me.
Yeah.
It's loaded, right? Exactly.
Very loaded. No, I realize.
So, right. So it's actually making bad choices, I would say. Just make some really bad choices. Go and screw up. Make a shitty first draft. Go and try something.
Well, but also it's making a new choice, because this is what was driving me crazy in my working life. I worked in local government for the District of Columbia for some time. And some years into that, I felt like I was in Groundhog's Day. It was like different year, but it was the same conversation, the same problems, the same complaints, then the same actions, and then the same results. And then next year, it's like, we're going to complain about this, because we just kept doing the same things. Yeah, exactly. And they got to the point where, like, I can't do this anymore. I have to go try to do something different, even if it's not perfect. Exactly. But this is just crazy. So it's also the courage of making a different choice.
Yeah, but that's sort of what we're teaching, right? So that's the opposite. Sort of, it's linear thinking opposed to iterative thinking. So you were not organized to learn. We are organized to execute, but we don't learn from what we do. So we just keep repeating the same old thing, because that's the safest thing we can do, because everything else is unsafe. So we're not organizing to learn. So
Yeah.
how do we
Well,
know?
and then there's a space where the questions come in. It's like, why are we doing this? Right? That's when
Exactly.
asking really good questions is very,
Exactly.
very
Yeah.
useful.
Why?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Why are we
Yeah.
doing this? Yeah. And then we were like, don't, you're not being, now you're not being helpful now. That's just being difficult. Let's go. We don't have time for this. Right. That's first. Then you
Mhm.
get, yeah, exactly. And so we don't appreciate
Yeah.
real questions. Yeah.
Well, Arne, we're gonna start to wind down our conversation. And before we do that, I have to land on this question. And question is, well, the name of this project is Making Business Art. Just curious, what comes up for you when you hear that phrase? What meaning do you make out of that?
Business art. Well, I think I probably started with that. For me, what I consider business is art. I create. For me, I my artistic muscle, if that's a thing, that's where I create business. That's how I design things that I bring together. So for me now is if I can make a drawing and use paint and all that, but I can also have people and bring them together, and then something happens. There's color and there's
Mm.
sound and that's meaningful. So value is kind of an experiences are being created. So to me, I don't make a distinction, to be honest.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I'm gonna throw a philosophical question here at you. Feel free to pass. It's a hard one, but I'm gonna throw it out there to see what happens. Given all that we have discussed, etc., what do you think? Like, what wants to be expressed through your life?
That's a very good question. And I'm getting older, right? So I do think about these things more. I hope kindness is going
Mm.
to be the one thing. Yeah.
Say more about that.
Well, kindness, it has something to do with attention, really being sort of not judgmental. And I'm not just saying to others, but also to yourself, right? Learning how to kind of not judging everything. And so that's part of the journey of learning who you are and being kind of okay with yourself, right? And I hope that that's something that I can kind of, at least for my children and the people around me, that kind of comes across, and that I hope that somehow, I hope that they will kind of take a little bit from that. I think so. And kindness is a lot of things, but it's just being open and not
Yeah.
judgmental. It's just being open and just being trying to find that story behind. Not saying, "Oh, I know that kind of. I know who you are, what kind of person you are," but you're like, no, even though there's someone I don't agree with, or which sometimes is really difficult because some of the
Mm.
people nowadays, especially if I go on Twitter, for instance, which I really shouldn't do anymore, you get into these kind of, and you read the
Yeah.
comments
Mhm.
below these kind of some posts, and you go, oh my God, people are horrible,
Mm.
right? So what I really want to kind of, I don't want to go there that way. I still think that even though some people say things that are horrible, I still think there's a person there that is really not horrible, really down to somewhere there, but is
Mhm.
misunderstood, scared,
Mm.
whatever. But there is a person that, in a way, or maybe struggling. I don't know, but there's someone who has a story, and if you know the story, so that's sort of what I believe: being kind to yourself, not judgmental, and to others, not judge them straight away. Do recognize when someone's an asshole, someone's an
Mm.
asshole. But I also feel that but must be a story to it. And I'm curious.
Right.
So that's the other word, maybe. I mean, that's
Mm.
maybe connected to kindness, is curious, being
Mm.
curious about people. Like, okay, I love to hear this story. Right. So instead of saying, this is that way, or this is my opinion, saying, I'm curious to know more. What's going on? Where did that come from? Right?
Mm.
When things go wrong, when things happen, or you meet people you don't agree with, they don't like, or you read something that makes you angry, you can respond angrily, or you can respond with curiosity. And I think, yeah, I think that's, yeah. And I connect that to kindness because curiosity needs kindness. Because that
Yeah.
if you're not kind, you're not open. right? And then you're not really curious. Just want to kind of prove what you were thinking anyway, right? So
Yeah.
but being, yeah, okay. Yeah.
That's a beautiful sentiment and a great takeaway. I practice some kindness, but I'm also very grinchy in other ways. Definitely need to just relax, let go of the Grinch, and embrace kindness and curiosity
Well, it's a journey. I
even
mean,
more. So
me too. I mean, come on. I
thank
mean,
you.
if I wake up in the morning, I'm not a morning person, and I didn't have my coffee yet, and I read a newspaper, and I don't know something, and there's so much stuff out there that makes me cringe or makes me angry. Of course, it's a journey, but again, that's where judgment. No, don't judge yourself on that based on
Yeah,
that. That's just human behavior, right? So
absolutely.
be kind to yourself. That's, if there's nothing wrong, you can't be kind, right? That's the whole point. So that
Good
is the
point.
whole thing.
Yeah.
You have to be kind because you're not perfect. Because you go like, damn it, stupid people, you know, is right. And then there's like, okay, but that voice can take over, and then you become something you don't want to be. But
Yeah.
there's another voice saying, yeah, but I wonder how that happened, or what's behind this, or why are these people so angry? You know,
Yeah.
why are they doing this? Interesting. I'm just curious. Is there something I can read about this? I'd love to talk to people and see what's happening. And then, because I've done these things, and they're like, oh, wait a minute. I still don't agree with you, but I kind of know where it came from. Like
Yeah.
people voting for people that like Trump or Brexit, which I totally don't understand. But if you read stories about people that do that, really deep stories about their lives and and their doubts and their situations, you go like, I get it. I
Yeah.
still think it's wrong decision, but I kind of get how you got here. I get it.
Yeah.
And the human psychology is so interesting. People who get into a cult, for instance, you can go like, you're crazy, you're in a cult. Or that's interesting. How did that happen? Because we
Yeah.
are all susceptible to these things. No one's perfect. You can get into a cult.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'll give a tip to your listeners if you're interested in that, human behavior and cults and podcasts. There's a podcast called A Very British Cult. That is amazing. As you go like, how did they get into that cult? And they're just like me. You're like, oh, could that
Yeah.
happen to me? Because they're like, yeah. Anyway,
Well, it's just like the terrorist lady, right? It's just a decision tree, and then suddenly you find yourself like, oh my
exactly,
God, here I am.
exactly.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you can't go back because you
Yeah.
made all these decisions, all these micro little decisions, you step by step by step, and all of a sudden you can't go back because it's going to hurt other people or yours or whatever, right? So don't get into a cult, people.
There we go. Ask questions. Okay, Arne. So we're gonna land this plane here. We're gonna do our lightning round, and that will be our conversation today. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Some questions are silly. Feel free to pass, but I do invite you to play.
Yeah.
First question: can you describe your closet and what state it's in?
Oh, it's currently, oh my God, there's a part where there's clothes hanging in hangers. That's kind of confusing because I try to kind of order it like there's like t-shirt, shirts, and it never works because new things get in, old things. And a lot of these things I haven't been wearing for such a long time and I don't want to throw them out. But I'm like, why do I still have them? Because I don't wear them. So it's too full. And then there's another part with shelves that I just like, because there's a sweater and now it's summer and then the sweaters are there and my t-shirts were behind it. And I try to get them out and I wasn't in a rush. So now it's a mess. And then I have like sock drawer thing that is too full. And so which I can't close. I can close it, but I really have to push it. And I think it's going to break or something, but it's quite a big, it's like a whole wall of closet with doors
Okay.
that open up not too well anyway. Yeah. And then that's the scenario of fighting that. And I have sort of, I can't, so I have, so dust, for instance, I have an allergy for dust. So to me, searching clothes is always like, oh, I don't want it because I know it's going to do something to my lungs and my breathing. So it's a
Yeah.
horrible place. It's a horrible place. But my daughter makes it more messy because she's almost 17 And she likes to wear my hoodies and stuff and shirts and my jackets. And all of a sudden she wears my stuff, my wife's stuff too, but mainly my stuff.
How
So
tall is
she
your
would go,
daughter?
well,
'Cause you're a
she's
tall
not,
guy.
I'm told she's not. Yeah, but no, it's over. It's like it's your boyfriend's blouse, your boyfriend's
Can she
jacket.
fit a
That's
friend in your shirt? Can they like?
yeah, totally. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, yeah. But it's been happening. That's the thing now. That's what the cool kids wear, right? And but she will mess up my. I'm going like, where's my thing? And then I'm like, who took my? Where's my? And then she's wearing it, and her anyway. So it's a whole thing at our place. Yeah.
I have to tell you, I love these questions because it just opens up like such a little window into somebody's
Oh,
life. It's
there's
really
something else.
interesting.
My cat likes to sleep on in my closet. So we have two
Yeah.
cats, and if they get the opportunity, they climb in and they hide somewhere in the back. And then every
Mhm.
now and then I pull out a shirt or something, and it's filled with hairs. And we're like, oh no, get the cat out of here. It's
Oh,
horrible.
that's funny. All right, next question is, what's the last piece of media that you loved? And that can be a book, a movie, a podcast, whatever else.
Ah, I'm so right now. Well, I'm listening to podcasts. The last one was the missing crypto queen, which is amazing. Also about a cult, by the way. But oh no, I listened on the way here. I'm listening to a podcast called "You're Dead to Me." "You're Dead to Me." It's a history podcast. It's with sort of a comedian and a historian and someone presenting it. And so they go through like I just listened to a history of Sparta,
Oh,
the
cool.
Spartans, and I they're there. I knew, but I didn't know. So it's a kind of nice. I love learning. I was like, like now, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. There's stuff about Spartans that you don't know, and so it goes through all kinds of these history of football and stuff like that. The history of football, and you
Okay.
learn new things. You go like,
Yeah.
which I mean soccer. Sorry,
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to check into that. Like that sounds super interesting.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Next question is, what is something that inspires you?
Music inspires me. Art inspires me. So many things that inspire me. Do you want me to name something?
And throw out just some whatever bubbles up to the top of mind.
Yeah, so I have a creative hero that I don't really listen a lot to his music anymore, but when I was a teenager, Frank Zappa was my creative hero because he was like, it's like if you listen to his music and his lyrics, right? You can't really think it's like, how did that even become popular? How did he get away with that? Being so off the grid, completely different and mocking everyone, really. How is that possible? That was such yeah. So that really inspires me, that kind of
Yeah.
people.
So that segues into the next question, which is, what song or band must you play in a road trip?
That is a really difficult question. That changes so much. If I'm with who is in the car.
Well, is there a recent road trip that you can remember where you said like, oh yeah, I really want to listen to this?
Yeah, I listen. So to me, it depends so much who I'm with. So if I'm with if I go on vacation with my family, I kind of, first of all, my daughter plays music and then I put music on but I kind of, but if I'm on a road, oh my God, there's so much music. But I so much like things like Radiohead, for instance. I really like that. But then I really love the really old R&B. I can play Aretha Franklin all the time. The last music I played, let me see, is it there? The last, so on my, I think it was Elbow. I think I listened to Elbow. Stevie Sly and the Family Stone. I was listening to. Yeah, that's the one I've been listening to a lot. Sly. Yeah, that's the one I just rediscovered again. I think I've been listening to that music for the last few months more than others. Yeah, somehow because of the creativity because I saw a documentary about him and I thought, oh yeah, right. Forgot about his music. Sly is in the family. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, that's a good question. By the way, for a road trip, that's no, sorry. I'm just like, yes, for a road trip, that's awesome music. Yeah, really loud.
Nice. So last question is, what do you want to see more of in the world?
I would like to see more of in the world. I'm trying not to give a too cliche answer to this.
Be yourself, Arne. Be authentic.
Well, no, but I mean, it depends on, I mean, there's so many things. Of course, I mean, more peace, more love, more kindness, more humility, more, I would like to see people be more humble.
Yeah.
That's what I like to see, because some people need to be more humble. And because we have a lot of people in the world that are influencing a lot of people and that are missing. And I'm not sure I have to name names, people like Elon Musk, people like that, but all the other tech kind of kings and queens out there that have mainly kings that behave like royals. I would say be more humble.
Absolutely. Well, and to connect that to the rest of the conversation, when we're not humble, it means we're not listening or paying attention to
Exactly.
the story. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So for sure. Well, Arne, thank you so much for joining today. We're coming to the end of our conversation, and I just wanted to open up space for you to share what you have going on. Why should people look you up, and where can they find you?
Well, look me up for if you want to talk more about art and business and whatever you want to talk about. That's always good. I can be found anywhere on the internet. I can be, I mean, LinkedIn, whatever. I'm on all the platforms, I think, although my daughter always comes up with new platforms. And I go, oh, really? Really, I have to be there too. So I think I'm missing out a little bit nowadays, but I do try to keep up. So find me, make me laugh. That'd be good. I'll make you laugh. And
And let's
and
see.
I'm work.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, and my new project, my new company is called Future Skills Academy, which is going to officially open next year. But we're going to do some soft launch this year, do some pilots, working just trial and error. We're going to apply all we know on this company as well.
Ooh, a little bit of failure.
Totally, yeah. No, well, a lot of failure. Well, I've been doing this for, I mean, yeah, working on this new company for the last few years already, and yeah, failure. It's going to happen. So
Awesome.
stick around and you'll see it.
Arne, it's so good to spend time with you. Thank you so much for coming on and
Likewise.
being a guest.
My
Great to see
honor.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And hopefully I will see you in person
I
sometime.
hope so too. Yeah.
But
Exactly.
in the meantime, we can see each other here on the interwebs, which is it's great technology for sure.
Awesome.
All right, sir.
Yeah.
Catch you soon. Bye-bye.